After I got pregnant, my husband's work started getting busier. He comforted me saying it was to earn more money for baby formula. However, I received chat records forwarded by his ex-girlfriend. The man who was always so proper and restrained would send messages like, "I've lost my appetite recently and don't want to eat. I just want to eat your tofu." I realized that the reason he agreed to let me have a baby, someone who had always insisted on a child-free lifestyle, was just to spite his ex-girlfriend. A child who is not wanted should not come into this world. 1. Before marrying Tyler, he repeatedly told me that he was child-free and didn't like children, even though I really hoped to have a baby of my own. But my love for him overcame everything. For 7 years of marriage, no matter how much pressure our parents put on us, I always insisted on being child-free with him. But half a year ago, after finishing a cigarette in silence, Tyler suddenly asked me, "Fiona, shall we have a baby?" At that moment, I thought it was because of my persistence that he finally agreed. I thought his love for me had overcome his own insistence. Until now in the hospital, I heard what he said to his ex-girlfriend Greta. "Aren't you jealous that I'm having a baby with someone else? I insisted on being child-free because of you, don't you know?" I felt like I had fallen into an ice cave. My whole body went cold. I watched my husband and his first love, this belated and grand breakup, almost masochistically. The door was half open. Greta was holding her belly, her face pale. She said, "Tyler, I can't do things at the right age. I can't be stuck in the past forever." Tyler was very angry, and he kept pressing his watch, his temples twitching slightly. He almost shouted, "Greta, didn't you hear what I said? I said Fiona is pregnant too. And it's twins, aren't you angry at all?" Greta avoided his gaze and said regretfully, "Tyler, congratulations, you'll have your own child soon. We should both look forward." Tyler couldn't help but step forward and took Greta's hand. He said, "How can I look forward?" I finally couldn't listen anymore and ran upstairs in despair. I bumped into the nurse in charge of me in the elevator. She frowned. "The father hasn't arrived for today's registration? I just heard that there might be a problem with the baby's heartbeat, so we may need another check." I took out my phone with a cold body and subconsciously called Tyler, but he hung up the phone, and then a text message came. "I'm busy." I typed a joking line completely numbly. "I just saw Greta, are you busy with her?" The phone rang urgently, and Tyler called me back. 2. Actually, I've always known about Greta. I knew they had been deeply in love, but later, because Greta's parents didn't approve, Greta even ran away from home for a while. At that time, Tyler was starting a business and was broke, with only a 3-digit figure in his bank account. They ate instant noodles for a whole month. Greta couldn't hold on, and went home to accept an arranged marriage with a family chosen by her parents. That was the darkest period of Tyler's life. That's when I met him. I took out a sum of money and invested in his company, becoming his partner. That money emptied all my savings, so we ended up eating instant noodles together. He was very professional but socially awkward, so I drank until I had a stomach bleed several times to win clients. The most serious time, I was in a coma for a day and a night. When I woke up, he held my palm and his eyes were red. "Maybe we should give up." I coughed and laughed. "Tyler, I like the persistent you. If you continue to be depressed, I won't like you anymore." That was the first time I expressed my true feelings to him. To this day, I still remember how he blushed instantly and retracted his hand. He stammered and asked, You like me?" I said, "If I didn't like you, why would I eat instant noodles with you for so long?" We got together that day. We depended on each other and gradually made the company better and better. We knew all each other's passwords, knew every past relationship of each other. I thought there were no secrets between us. It turns out, it was just me who thought so. I didn't know that Tyler insisted on being child-free because he made a promise with Greta when they broke up that he would only have children with her. I even less knew that Tyler suddenly wanted a child because Greta had a child with someone else. A sense of absurdity came over me. For a moment, I couldn't help but wonder, what was I during these 10 years? 3. I found a quiet place and answered the phone. Tyler's voice came through. "Are you at the hospital?" I softly replied, "Mm. I just ran into Greta and chatted for a while. I'll be right up. He thought for a moment and added, don't think too much about it. Her due date is coming soon, and her husband isn't around. Seeing her so pitiful, I went and bought her breakfast. Tyler smiled and joked, Fiona, do you think everyone is as lucky as you? For such a small thing like a prenatal checkup, your husband accompanies you throughout the process? I found it funny and smirked, my tone indifferent. Yeah, I'm really lucky. So lucky to have a husband who has loved me for 3 years of dating and 7 years of marriage, but never loved me. When Tyler arrived, the doctor looked serious with a furrowed brow. He subconsciously held his breath. What's wrong? The doctor handed him an examination slip. Go for another monitoring. We can't make a conclusion yet. Tyler held the slip, looking a little nervous. That nervousness didn't seem fake. At that moment, I suddenly doubted if I had just had a dream. It was all just my imagination. But the next second, Tyler's phone rang, shattering my wishful thinking. It was Greta. She was crying weakly, calling Tyler affectionately. Tyler, I'm so scared. What should I do? My water broke, but the caregiver went out to eat, and no one is looking after me now. I'm sorry. Can you come over and help me? I really don't know who else to turn to. Tyler didn't hesitate at all and pressed the button for the second floor where Greta was staying. I calmly said, Tyler, the examination is on the 3rd floor. He said anxiously, didn't you hear that Greta is in trouble? It's okay to put off the examination for a while. The elevator dinged and opened, and Tyler was about to rush out. I grabbed his arm and asked, Tyler, Greta is in the hospital. What big deal could happen? But now the baby's heartbeat is abnormal. Are you sure you want to go with her? My straightforward tone made Tyler instantly furious. He turned cold and said word by word, Fiona, can you not be so selfish? You have me to accompany you and take care of you. But Greta is alone, and I'm the only friend she can rely on in this country. Looking into his eyes, I suddenly found it ridiculous. So the next second, I suddenly let go of his hand. Is she a friend or a boyfriend? Ding, the elevator door closed again, completely separating me and him into 2 worlds. 4. When the doctor told me that one of the twins might be absorbed by the other, a social media notification popped up for Greta's update. The words mother and child are safe were paired with a photo of her holding a baby. I was sure Tyler took the photo. Over the years, Tyler's photography skills had never improved. He always liked to shoot at an angle of about 10 degrees, which was almost imperceptible to the naked eye. But I was very sensitive to angles, so I could always tell. In the comments section, I also found Tyler's account. He said, congratulations. Greta replied to him, fortunately, I still have you. The baby's godfather, give him a name. Tyler named him Silas. A month ago, when I found out I was pregnant, Tyler and I discussed names. He said, looking beyond, playing the cheen in a boat. If it's a boy, let's call him Silas. But now, even the name belonged to someone else. MS. Fiona, are you okay? The doctor pulled out 2 pieces of paper and handed them to me. Actually, having twins isn't necessarily a good thing. The mother will suffer a lot. One being absorbed by the other is also very common in medicine. And many pregnant women will choose to reduce the fetus. I just suggest that you stay in the hospital for a while to observe the situation. She thought I was sad about the baby, but I wiped away my tears with a tissue, and when I looked up, I was unusually calm. I asked her, what if I don't want either of the babies? 5. I scheduled an abortion. Before the abortion, the doctor advised me, MS. Fiona, you're not young anymore. It might be difficult to get pregnant again in the future. I personally suggest you think it over. I signed my name on the surgical consent form. I've thought it through. I've never been a parasitic plant that clings to others. When I realized that this relationship was a pair of mismatched shoes, the best choice for me was to throw it away. The surgery was scheduled for the following afternoon. I went home to pack my essentials, and the room was cold and empty. Tyler didn't come back until the early morning. I was already asleep by then, and he came in with a cold body, lifted the covers, and put his hand on my abdomen. I avoided him and said coldly, it's cold. Don't be silly, Tyler said helplessly. Today was really a special situation. Greta's baby was born, and the caregiver who was looking after her was away, and I happened to be at the hospital, so it was the best option to call me. He turned on the light, and the sudden light was blinding. I squinted and asked him, "The child is definitely named Silas, right?" Tyler paused. I looked at him and sneered. "Whose surname? Silas?" The smile on Tyler's face froze, then his face turned dark. I said, "Tyler, no matter how much you care, the child isn't yours." He took a deep breath. "Fiona, can you not speak so harshly?" He pressed his temples, suppressing his anger, and explained patiently, "I just didn't think of a better name at the time. Don't worry, when our child is born, I'll think of another best name in the world for him. No need." I lifted the covers, stood up, and opened the drawer. Then I handed him the divorce agreement. My tone was extremely calm. "You even have a child. I won't disturb you and Miss Greta from continuing your previous relationship. Let's get a divorce, Tyler." 6. Tyler instantly stood up. He doubted his ears and said incredulously, "Fiona, what did you say?" I said calmly, "I consulted a lawyer, and we divided our property fairly. The company shares were divided according to my investment proportion, and you and I each have 3 of the 6 houses in the city." Tyler realized I was serious. He picked up the divorce agreement and flipped through it page by page. His face grew uglier and uglier. Finally, he raised his hand and tore it in half. "I don't agree. Just because I went to help take care of an old friend, you're making such a fuss. Is it interesting?" Tyler didn't feel he was wrong at all. He turned cold and accused, "I always thought you were very sensible. Why are you being so unreasonable this time? Yes, Greta is my ex-girlfriend, but she's married. I told you as soon as she returned to China, for fear that you would misunderstand. Isn't that enough?" Seeing him with red eyes from anger, I was momentarily confused. Yeah, to be fair, Tyler seemed to have done enough. The child Greta was carrying wasn't his. During the marriage, he didn't cheat. Even going to help Greta today, I knew about it. Perhaps if I told others, they would think I was being unreasonable. But it's like a blank sheet of paper, so pure and white. Suddenly one day, I found out that this paper had once been so dirty. It was bleached. Looking at Tyler, I felt a little regret. After all, I used to think that I could really grow old with him. My emotions were unprecedentedly calm. "I'll temporarily move to another house. You think about it." As I got up, he walked towards the living room before me. He lowered his voice and said coldly, "You're pregnant and it's inconvenient for you to move around. I'll move." "Fiona, I know you're emotionally unstable because of pregnancy hormones, and you tend to be narrow-minded. It's okay, I can give you time. But I hope you can calm down and think carefully. Don't let our relationship end just because of your unreasonable behavior." Before closing the door, he looked at me one last time and said, "Think about it carefully. Is there any possibility between me and Greta?" 7. At first, I really thought seriously about Tyler's words. Was there a possibility between him and Greta? Until my best friend said, "He's leading you on. Why do you care if he has a possibility with other women? That's not something you should consider. You want a divorce not because he cheated, but because from the beginning, he was with you not because he loved you. He's eating in this bowl while looking at the pot, and he still dares to say you're being unreasonable? It's clearly him who betrayed the relationship. If Greta hadn't gotten married, or if she had gotten divorced, and she came back to the country, do you believe that Tyler could immediately divorce you?" My best friend's words hit the mark, and I was completely awakened. Especially after hanging up the phone, I saw Greta's newly posted social media. Heartfelt late-night snack, so touched. The accompanying picture was of the small wontons that Tyler loved to eat. After leaving home, he went straight to her hospital, looking exhausted. Knowing it was impossible, he still willingly did so. I was just a spare tire. So, I didn't hesitate any longer. The next day, with my best friend's company, I had an abortion. Actually, this wasn't the first child between Tyler and me. 3 years ago, I got pregnant once. When I excitedly handed Tyler the pregnancy test, he got very angry. He threw the pregnancy test directly into the trash can. "Fiona, what are you doing? Didn't I say I didn't want children? Did you secretly do something?" At that time, I didn't know why he was so angry. Forcing back my tears, with his company, I had an abortion. After the abortion, his emotions finally calmed down, and he held my hand and comforted me. I don't want our world for two to be destroyed. He didn't know that for a long time after that. Because of this child, I suffered from mild depression. I would often cry myself to sleep at night. So when he suggested having a child with me, I really felt like I had been hit by a pie from the sky, and I was indescribably happy. That was the happiest time for me and him after we got married. So when I personally peeled my child out of my body, the pain was unimaginable. In my best friend's arms, I cried loudly. The two of us leaned against each other and went downstairs, where we met Tyler and Greta. Tyler immediately rushed forward looking anxious. "Why are you crying? Is there something wrong with the baby?" Later, my best friend said that if I hadn't given her a heads up, she would have thought I was being unreasonable too. Tyler acted so well, but I immediately pushed his hand away and said coldly, "It has nothing to do with you." Tyler felt a little embarrassed. "The child is mine. How can it have nothing to do with me?" I walked past him and walked out of the hospital. "Tyler, you should care more about your godson." Instantly, Greta stood in front of me. She looked pale and pitiful, and even reached out and grabbed my arm. She said very helplessly, "Sister-in-law, don't be like this. I really don't want to affect your relationship because of me. Tyler and I have long passed. As a friend, I gave birth to a child that day, and I had no choice but to find him. But there's really nothing between me and him. Just don't get a divorce from Tyler, okay?" With her few brief words, I instantly became the object of everyone's pointing and whispering. She was innocent and pitiful, and I was unreasonable. My best friend couldn't help but exclaim, "What a white lotus!" Because of my best friend's words, Tyler's face turned dark on the spot. "Fiona, what did you say to your best friend behind my back?" I pulled my hand back, but Greta swayed like a weak willow and fell backwards. It seemed like I had used a lot of force. Tyler took her into his arms and looked at me with disappointment. "Fiona, I always thought you were very sensible. How come you've become like this now?" Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. Looking at him with a look of heartache, I left Tyler with one last sentence. "Tyler, Greta has been child-free for a shorter time than you, and she had a child before you. You should be very angry, right?" At that moment, Tyler froze, looking up at me incredulously. "I heard everything that day," I said. 8. That night, Tyler came home. The divorce agreement was placed on the coffee table, and I said bluntly, "Sign it today. I don't want to tear each other apart and end up in divorce court." He sat on the sofa, flipping through the divorce agreement again and again, and finally covered his face and asked, "How much have you heard? Does it matter?" I asked him back. The pen was placed beside the divorce agreement, but he never picked it up from start to finish, until I packed my suitcase and dragged it out of the bedroom. He suddenly got up and came to take my suitcase. "You're pregnant. Don't carry anything too heavy, let me." "Are you going on a trip?" I looked up at him. "No, I plan to study abroad." This was the first time I saw a panicked look on Tyler's face. Almost instantly, his hands clenched into fists, and he subconsciously tried to make amends. "Are you going abroad to travel? Which country? Do you need me to go with you?" "Tyler," I interrupted him. "I told you a few years ago that I wanted to study abroad for a while, but you didn't agree, thinking that a long-distance relationship would be difficult. Since we're going to get a divorce anyway, I'm finally free, so I plan to study abroad during this time. Just sign your name quickly. I don't want to worry about the divorce after I go abroad." Tyler froze there, holding the handle of the suitcase without moving. The veins on the back of his hand bulged, as if he was using all his strength. Therefore, I couldn't grab my suitcase back at all. I sighed, "Tyler, let go." But he suddenly looked up. "Fiona, I swear, I haven't made any fundamental mistakes. I haven't done anything out of line with Greta." "I know," I said indifferently. He couldn't believe it. "Just because of those few words, you're determined to divorce me?" I nodded gently. "Just because of those few words." He was full of unwillingness. "What about the child? Haven't you always wanted a child? What about the child? Have you ever thought that after we divorce, the child will become a child of a single-parent family dash?" I interrupted him calmly. "I've thought about it, And I don't want the child to grow up without complete love. Hope rose in his eyes. Then let's not get divorced. So I had the baby aborted, I said. 9. In that instant, all the color drained from Tyler's face. He trembled, his eyes bloodshot, and he instinctively took 2 steps back, his voice hoarse as he spoke. The baby, is it gone? Yes, I had an abortion, I said calmly. Tyler grabbed my shoulders in disbelief. Fiona, that was our child. How could you make this decision on your own? We finally had a baby, 2 of them. You just had them aborted like that. Are you crazy? Even if I did something wrong, you shouldn't joke about the child. You're so selfish. For so many years, it was the first time I had seen him so emotional. Because of me. Once I who loved him would have been happy because of this. But at this moment, seeing him like this, my heart did not stir in the slightest. I even frowned slightly and said with some disgust, Tyler, calm down. Are you angry now because you lost to Greta? Or because you lost the child? Hearing this, Tyler's expression froze. I couldn't help but sneer. Also, I lost a child. The day you accompanied Greta to give birth, I went for a checkup alone, and the doctor told me that one of the children was absorbed by the other. How is that possible? Tyler took another step back. He didn't even dare to look at me, just muttering over and over. How could this be? You see, Tyler. I shook my head gently. You don't even know this, so why don't you sign the divorce agreement? I finally snatched my suitcase from his hand and turned to leave without looking back. After completing all the procedures for studying abroad, I received a call from Greta. She asked to meet me. When I entered the coffee shop, the child she was holding was crying loudly. She seemed to be annoyed by the crying, frowned, and even reached out and gently pinched the child's face. The child immediately cried even louder. When I sat down, a flash of panic appeared in her eyes. Sister-in-law, you're here. Don't call me sister-in-law. I'm about to divorce Tyler. I looked at the child in her arms and asked, the child has been born for so long. Hasn't the child's father returned to the country yet? The smile on Greta's face froze for a moment. She casually made an excuse and went straight to the point. Fiona, actually, I'm here to explain for Tyler. I know he doesn't want to get a divorce. This is all because of me. Maybe only if I explain, you two have a chance to continue this marriage. Tyler and I did agree before that we would only have each other's children. Even if we were forced to get married, we would be childless. But that was so many years ago. Don't take it too seriously. Tyler actually loves you very much. He's been used to you for so many years with you. Her eyes looked so sincere, but every sentence was full of subtext. By the end, she was even moved by herself. Actually, over the years, I really haven't forgotten Tyler. But seeing how much he loves you now, I guess I can let go. Every word was filled with youthful regret. But my expression didn't change at all. I even smiled. Are you finished? I picked up my coffee cup, took a sip and said calmly, Greta, you're probably the one who wants us to get divorced the most, right? Let me guess. Tyler is your backup plan, right? Greta's face turned pale. 10. My suspicions about Greta's unhappiness actually started the day I had the abortion. The dress she was wearing was an out-of-fashion luxury brand from several years ago. But as far as I knew, Greta's husband was very wealthy. And Greta's social media always liked the latest luxury brands, proving that she pursued these things. But she didn't have the financial means to keep up with the latest trends. In addition, she had been back in the country for so long, and her husband hadn't come back to see her once. Even when she gave birth, he didn't show up. I immediately hired a private detective and discovered that Greta and her husband had been estranged for a long time. I heard that at first, the man loved Greta very much. Later on, their feelings gradually faded. He had mistresses, 4th mistresses, 5th mistresses. Last year, in order to tie her husband down, Greta drugged him and got pregnant with his child. Unexpectedly, her husband asked her to abort the child. In order to give birth to the child smoothly, Greta chose to escape back to her home country. She tried to contact Tyler, and unexpectedly, this man was actually still waiting for her. So Tyler foolishly became her fallback. Her goal, from the beginning to the end, was to make me divorce Tyler. That day, hearing their conversation was not an accident. It was the morning I went to register my child at the hospital, and I met Greta at the hospital entrance. She said enthusiastically, "Sister-in-law, I live on the second floor. Why don't you come to my room later? I have some pregnancy insights that I can tell you about." As she said, I went to her room, but I heard the whole conversation between her and Tyler. Whether it was me or Tyler, we were both played with in the palm of her hand from beginning to end. 11. I don't know what you're talking about. Greta lowered her head, looking hurt. Sister Fiona, I really hope things go well between you and Tyler. Can you please not misunderstand my good intentions? I looked at her and smiled lightly. Compared to Tyler, you should be more concerned about keeping your husband, right? After all, his family is wealthy, and he has money that Tyler could never save in several lifetimes. I quoted a number. This is your husband's number, right? Greta looked up suddenly. What do you mean? I recorded what you just said, and I've already sent it to him. I raised an eyebrow. Now, he should know that in the first few years, you didn't get pregnant because you still had another man in your heart. Let's wait and see what awaits you next. Greta suddenly stood up, and the coffee in her hand splashed towards me. Her voice suddenly became sharp. Fiona, you bitch, you actually played me. She pounced on me, pressed me down, and her hands clamped tightly around my neck. Her son was crying loudly beside her, but she didn't care at all. She just cared about hating me. I'm telling you, even if he doesn't want me anymore, so what? As you said, I still have Tyler as a fallback. You're more pathetic than me. You don't even have a man who truly loves you. At least Tyler has been waiting for me for so many years. As soon as you two get divorced, I'll be Mrs. Tyler. She was clawing and snarling, her expression twisted. The next second, she was flipped over and fell to the ground in embarrassment. Tyler stood in front of me. His eyes were full of disappointment. Greta, how did you become like this? 12. I didn't bother with Greta and Tyler's subsequent development. My goal had been achieved. To reveal Greta's true colors in front of Tyler and Greta's husband. With only 3 days left before I was supposed to go abroad, Tyler finally came to my door. Through the door he called me, his voice pleading. Fiona, open the door, can we talk? No matter what we talk about, I promise you. I'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. I sighed and opened the door. A tired and haggard Tyler stood at the door, looking dejected. In just a few days, he had lost a lot of weight. The clothes that used to fit him perfectly were now hanging loosely on him, his body shrinking hollowly inside. His eyes were also sunken and bloodshot veins filled his eyes. The moment he saw me, a forced smile appeared on his face. He reached out, blocked the door, and begged, almost pleading. Fiona, I was wrong. Let's not get a divorce, okay? He was reeking of alcohol. I didn't even let him in. He just stood there at the door, blocking the door, his words often reversed. Fiona, I can't figure out why we have to get divorced. Haven't I been good enough to you all these years? I'm the model husband in everyone's mouth, just because of a few casual memories of the past. Do you have to go to the point of divorce with me? I have absolutely no improper behavior with her. How can you be so heartless? Didn't you say you loved me very much? He looked at me so pleadingly, and all the chaotic words he said were still accusations against me. After he finished speaking in one breath, I sighed and said, Tyler, I really loved, deeply loved. If it weren't for love, I wouldn't have eaten instant noodles with you for so many years, and I would have gone to the hospital for a gastric hemorrhage 5 times for you. For you, even though I really like children, I also insisted on being childless for 7 years. I did so much for you, and I never denied my deep love for you. But because I loved, and because it was so passionate, I couldn't accept that the admission ticket to love that I got was actually sitting in the wrong seat from the very beginning. I completely exposed his true thoughts at the beginning. Ask yourself, when you first married me, how much was it because you liked me? And how much was it because you were angry? All the blood drained from Tyler's face, and he grabbed me urgently. But we've been together for 7 years. How many 7 years can there be in a lifetime? And besides, in these 7 years, I've unknowingly fallen in love with you. Isn't that enough? I shook my head gently. Tyler, I can't accept that my marriage was a scam from the beginning. Just thinking that I was a tool for your anger, I feel very disgusting. The corridor lights went out. His face was hidden in the darkness. He lowered his head and retracted his hands, covering his face. At that moment, I seemed to see something crystal clear flowing from between his fingers, silently swallowed by the darkness. But when I looked again, there was nothing. 13. I successfully obtained the divorce certificate. The division of property with Tyler was almost effortless. He agreed to all my demands and slowly signed the divorce agreement. I sold my share of the company, and a large sum of money was deposited into my bank account, enough to support me for the rest of my life. Everything seemed to be going in the right direction. But the day before I was about to go abroad, I received a call from Tyler's mother. She asked me to go back and take a look at Tyler. She said, "This child, he can't bear to part with you. I can't figure out why. You have such a good relationship. How can you just get divorced?" During this period, he has been cooped up at home, and he doesn't care about the company's affairs anymore. He just drinks and drinks, and he was so drunk that he was hospitalized. The first thing he did when he woke up was to look for you. "So Fiona, can you come to the hospital and see him? I'm afraid he won't be able to get over it." I even heard Tyler's voice. He said weakly, "Mom, I'm sorry to her. Don't disturb Fiona." The flight attendant was already reminding me to turn off my phone. I sighed and said directly to Tyler's mother, "Aunt, Tyler did something I can't forgive, so I'm sorry, I can't go see him. A good ex should be like dead. I hope we don't contact each other again for the rest of our lives." Then I hung up the phone decisively. The plane took off and carried me into the clouds, flying into a new life full of hope. 14. I didn't hear about Tyler again until 2 years later. By then, I had completed my studies with excellent results and was planning to start my own company after returning home. When my best friend called me, she mentioned Greta. She looked gossipy. "You don't know, she's pretty miserable now. Do you remember the child she gave birth to at that time? I heard that she did a paternity test with her husband, and the child was not his." I was stunned, and I had a little hope. Not his? Yes. Not many people know about this. I only heard it mentioned when chatting with other sisters. I heard that her husband was found to be infertile and couldn't have children at all. So, maybe she didn't want to get pregnant at the beginning. It wasn't like we thought. She couldn't get pregnant. Later, her husband had mistresses, and she became anxious, and she would do anything to fight for property. After discovering that she had been cheated on, she was kicked out of the house. Greta's family was ashamed of her and didn't want her either, so she went to Tyler with a thick skin. I paused. Tyler shouldn't ignore her, right? Indeed. My best friend shook her head and sighed. He did. He gave her a few $100,000, but she started gambling with the money, and once she stayed in the casino for 7 days and 7 nights. When she went home, her child had starved to death. I couldn't help but take a deep breath. A few days ago, I heard that she was hacked to death by debt collectors. My best friend couldn't help but sigh. "And Tyler, since you left, the company has started to go downhill. All the company's business used to be brought in by you. Besides knowing a little technology, how could he understand these things? He messed up all the previous contracts in a short time. And now he is barely surviving and is about to declare bankruptcy." I sighed. The world is full of irony. My best friend advised me, "Listen to me, don't be soft-hearted." As a result, as soon as my best friend said this, I received an overseas call that night. It was Tyler calling, asking about my recent situation, and he also casually inquired whether I had a boyfriend now. I said, "I plan to focus on my career in the future." Tyler was silent for a long time, and finally said hoarsely, "Fiona, you should still have a lot of the joint property we divided at that time in your account, right? Can you lend me some?" I couldn't help but exclaim, "Have you fallen to the point where you need to borrow money from me?" Tyler was silent for a long time. "I've thought a lot about it these years. Indeed, I was wrong. If possible, can we?" I immediately interrupted him. No lending." Tyler didn't say much more, probably because he felt I was too cold, so his self-esteem was hurt. These 4 words were also the last words I said to him. Just half a month later, I heard of his death again. The proud Tyler, after the company declared bankruptcy, could not bear the blow of falling from heaven to hell. He smashed the company's floor-to-ceiling windows and jumped down, ended his own life. I looked up at the clouds outside the window. My best friend asked me, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "I'm moving on to my new life." The breeze blew, and everything was fine.